save! Mercy, what a stop!
My goodness, what a save!
What a save! What a glove save there, but what a stop! Looked like a short goal. You talk about an A+ save and maybe the save of the night.
Welcome to the Goalie Science Podcast, where we break down the science of goaltending, coaching, and everything in between. I'm Dr. Jamie Phillips, former professional goalie, board-certified physical therapist, and goalie performance specialist, alongside my co-host, Derek Boujan, owner of Boujan Goaltending and On Ice Hockey Performance Center. Whether you're on your way to a game, gearing up for practice, or just tuning in, grab your favorite drink and let's drop the puck on this week's episode. Welcome to the Goalie Science Podcast, episode 120. My goodness, we're going crazy. Derek, listen to your episode that you did solo last week. Very good job. Again, still just so hyper fit. Every time I'm on my phone now, I'm just like really self-conscious that I'm on my phone. But we have a really special guest today. We're gonna get into the interview later on, but we had an interview with Chuck Duss, who is a mental skills performance coach. He's got a fantastic story. He works with a lot of high-level athletes, and this is one that if you're listening and you're both a parent or a player, you are going to get an incredible amount of value to this. And if you're dealing with some things, then Chuck is definitely a person that you should reach out to and ask for help, because he's excellent. And he throws out his cell phone number in the pod, so he's probably going to be blowing up. But other than that, Bruce, how's the summer training? Are you full swing?
Yeah, you ask me that every week. So for the full swing, Jamie, full swing.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, for us, school just ended last week. All the schools are now officially done. And so now at the rink, it's hard to get ice because we take out one of our surfaces, and now it's packed, other than the weekends. For some reason, the weekends are always open. So that's where I do most of my goalie stuff.
Oh, that's good. Oh, no, we're going, full swing. Tonight's Wednesday. We record on Wednesdays for everybody who doesn't know that. And Wednesday night is power skating, yoga, and video. And I'm the video. I think we talked about it. I get confused because I'm doing vlog now. Everybody go watch the vlog, and Boujan Goaltending on YouTube, and here. So I get mixed up on where I talk about things. But I changed how I'm doing video this year. I'm not doing review of goalies and drills and stuff like that. That's been done. We did that. Everybody does that. I've taken a completely different approach, and I'm teaching hockey. Last week I taught the 1-3-1 power play. Tonight is the second half of my power play, so we're going to do overloads and 2-3 spreads. And then next week, I'm going to go into reading forechecks and how that affects our puck game. But I'm not going to do any goalie review of drills. I'm not going to do any goalie review of like how goals are going in. We're going to teach other aspects of the game. And 2 weeks in, very impressed with how much retention they've gotten. So this is something I went over with ever since you moved away and left me. I've had to find new friends. So my new goalie and hockey buddy his name is Ryan Dickey. And we go for coffee once a week in town in Caledonia to a place called Revival. And we just talk hockey, and it's usually about 3 or 4 hours. And I ran this by him, and he's a father of a goalie who plays U13 AAA. And he thought it was a great idea. So he actually put his son into those video sessions with me, and he gives me straight up goods that like he'll tell me whether things are good or bad. He's like us. And he said his son came home and told him everything he learned, and it was awesome. So we'll see how it goes this summer. But the truth will be in the pudding in November, and when we're looking at whether these guys actually can start to see these games in slow motion and make these reads better because of the work we're doing right now in June.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Like I said, I'm stole that from you when I started doing power play stuff. I think it's really good. And we did our first one the other day, and I think the goalies got it because we just don't really pay attention to that stuff. And it's really because it just helps you understand and see how the play develops. And like when you know how things are supposed to look, you can kind of anticipate a little bit better, make some reads, and then you can tell when things are going to break down and when to expect the unexpected. So definitely something that we need to do a lot more of. Since I abandoned you, to be fair, I just haven't really found any friends here. what I need to do is find a strength coach friend. So if they're actually this is my plug for the day. If you are someone you know is like a strength coach in West Michigan or in the United States and you are looking to relocate, I am in the position of hiring a full-time strength coach. So just reach out to me at jamie@elitegoaliemethod.com. And then we can take that conversation from there. But darn, there was something I was going to say about summer training.
That is so darn. Pardon? I'm laughing because you said darn. Like
I don't know. I'm trying to be more conscious because I want to swear all the time, and I'm trying to be a little bit more conscious of even on the ice. I start saying fudge now because like I'm mic'd up, and sometimes like especially when a goalie makes a huge save, I want to use that save and put it on the internet, but I can't. I don't want to have me swearing all the time because that's my reaction when I get robbed. So I usually just say fudge when I get robbed now. I got a set of Flylight pads, the ones that I'm giving away this month to a member of EGM Labs, another plug. But I know you got some pads in, and a couple of my goalies are starting to wear the SV ones. SV Pro. What's your initial thought on it?
Well, I just got them in 2 days ago. So Bauer is awesome. I've loved Bauer, and on this pod, I've pumped Bauer stuff forever. But yeah, they got the new SV Pros out, and I'm looking at the junior intermediate, and they have them in senior also. They look awesome. In my hands, like I went through it, the leg channel is very cool. The strapping system on it is very cool. It's more like the Vapor strapping system than like anybody else who's used like the GSXs.
Mhm.
But the knee block is like the one thing. And if you watch my vlog that's dropping today, you'll see the knee block is really thick and really stiff. It's like that one piece knee block. So I think that's stability. They're calling it the stability flex, I think, on the knee block. I haven't put them on the ice yet to see how they perform. I'm waiting till all of the sets come in. I'm getting 3 sets. I've only had 1 come in yet. So, but I'm excited. The one thing, like I'm not a sponsored Bauer guy, so I will be honest with the review, is the one thing I want to see is how they slide at the junior level compared to the Vons. And that is right now the one thing about the Vons that I love is that they have this quick slide, and the sliding ability in the Vons is great. But with the SB Pros, they have changed the sliding surface. So I'm excited to see how it works. And if the sliding ability is better than they were in the GSX, then I do know my kid wants to go back into Bowers. It's just a matter of if I will let him or not. But the gloves, pretty cool. They got a double T, which I love. So the pocket's a lot bigger than on the GSXs. And the blocker it's a Bauer blocker, and we should know the rule now. You wear a Bauer blocker.
Bauer blocker is a mandatory thing. Actually, another one of my younger goalies is wearing the new SLRs, and they do slide really well. I'll give Fawn a lot of credit there. The SV Pros, pretty good. It's kind of weird because like, a lot of my younger goalies, they have to get gear that's too big for them because they need to grow into it. So like I always look at it. It's hard to get like a hard and fast kind of idea until more and more goalies kind of get into it. But I haven't the set that that Goalie Monkey sent me is a set of mediums. I know Bauer is going to send me a set of large Flylights, and I'm excited to give them for a spin. But they very, very nice looking pads, and again, like they have the updated E blocks and stuff, and oof.
Can I say one thing about, because we're in like new gear territory, right? For parents. Don't buy gear the second your equipment's a little bit too small for you. Because if you do it then the gear is going to be too big when you go up a size. And that is going to affect their training. So what I say is you wait until the equipment is so obviously too small that when you go up the next size, it's going to fit them appropriately. Because the one thing right now, like it's June, there's not a hockey game. I don't care what World Selects tells you. I don't care what every spring hockey organization tells you. There's not a game within the next 10 weeks that matters.
Yeah.
You can wear your gear that is a little bit too small for you because the priority right now is training. So train and get faster in your gear that's a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter. You're going to get a little bit more athletic. You're going to be able to skate a little bit more. You're going to be able to work on your edges because the second you put gear on that's too big, what happens?
Can't move. And you get slower and you change the way that you move.
Yes. So caution your parents, caution yourself when you're buying new gear in the spring, in the summer. Okay. Wait till it is so apparently too small before you jump up that size. And stop buying stuff that is too big so your goalie looks bigger. That is the dumbest thing you can do.
It's always the worst the worst number or the worst decision because like everyone thinks that you're gonna look so much bigger and instead it slows you down and you look way worse.
And you give up rebounds and you can't move and you can't see the puck because you can't your chin down because your chest protector is too big. It's craziness. It really is. And like that's one of my biggest pet peeves. I have kids come in from Pro Hockey Life and I'm like, your gear is way too big. Oh, this is what they told me to buy at Hockey Life. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's so I put
Yeah.
you chased.
I said that to one of my boys. I was like, hopefully you grow 3 inches this summer because your gear is pretty big. But I mean, I get it. That's why I think sideline swap and those things being available, like if you can get secondhand pro level gear and you use it for 1 season and it's half the price of you would buy for a brand new set and you can have a new set every year, new to use set every year that actually fits, definitely do that because that's just you just move better. You don't need your pads up to your belly button. Except this is all we see is pads up to the belly button.
Yeah. So anything else new with you? Anything cool coming on the horizon?
No, just the gym. We'll talk about that in an episode or two, but mainly I'm looking for a full-time strength coach. Because I'd love to do all these things, but I'm only one man, so I need to hire. Basically, I really want to find a good team and someone who exercise science degree background. Don't need to have an extensive training background. Ideally, you played hockey, but open to learn, open to being relentless, and putting together, turning the facility into the best hockey training place and like sports science place on the planet. It's kind of the goal.
Right on. I like.
What about you? Any parting shots before we do get into the episode with Chuck?
Parting shots? I don't think so. I might have forgotten. I don't know. My brain is mushy. But I just again listen to this full interview. Like full disclosure, I sat there and listened as a guy trying to soak it all in. I didn't say very much. You are significantly stronger at running an interview than I am to begin with, and I know that. So I always let you take the lead on those. But this is one of the best. This is one of the best guest speakers I've ever heard on a podcast. Biasly being on our podcast, that's pretty cool. But I do love listening to guest speakers when they are interesting. And this is one of the best guest speakers that I've ever heard on a podcast. So give it a listen right to the end and reach out to him. And it's something that being June's Men's Mental Health Month, there's a lot of stuff that he said that I know would have hit home with you and definitely hit home with me. So this is my parting shot is listen to this interview.
Before we get into the interview, I just want to put a quick disclaimer that this episode, we talk about things about suicide, mental health, and very serious topics. So if you're someone that is struggling, please do not hesitate to reach out to someone. You can also call or text 988 if you are struggling and you need help and you need to talk to someone. So everyone enjoy the episode with Chuck Thus. All right, welcome to the Goalie Science Podcast, Chuck Thus. Now, Chuck was introduced to me through one of my shooters who works with you. And the thing is, and like we talked about before show, Chuck, we just like to have a conversation. So first off, tell the viewers and listeners who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you, Jamie and Derek. I appreciate you guys having me on the podcast. And as you mentioned, my name is Chuck Thus, and I'm a former professional goalie. Played Division I at Miami of Ohio as well. before going on to play 8 years professional. And through all of that time, Jamie, as you and I have talked about, I had my share of struggles, but it was at a time when you really didn't talk about it. You didn't dare put your hand up. You didn't dare ask for help. You just put your head down and battled through it, and you tried to find a way. And that's exactly what I did. As many years later, I would find out that I was dealing with, high level anxiety, and it never really showed up into my game until I was turned professional. And after I retired, I thought that it was going to go away. I thought, well, whatever I was doing there at the rink, that's going to finally go away. But it didn't take long to creep into my normal life. Depression came into at a really high level, and I really escalated to a point that I didn't want to be here anymore. And I was so conditioned, Jamie and Derek, to not ask for help, because that's what we're told from the minute you step on the ice as a 3-year-old. When you fall and you scrape your knees or bang your head on the ice or whatever, don't ask for help, don't cry, show you're tough, you're a hockey player now, man up, all of this stuff. And over 25 or 30 years of hearing all of that, the last thing I was going to do was put my hand up and ask for help. I was going to figure it out, but it almost cost me my life. And thank goodness I was able to ask for help, go on a very extensive journey of figuring out who I was and how I got to that point, and fill the toolbox full of tools so that now I reach back and I help other elite athletes do the same thing, that I help them show up as the best version of themselves, because there's just a lot on the plates of these young men and women. And without having someone to open up and confide in, it can be a lot, as we all know.
Can you contribute a lot of that anxiety to playing, or is it just, was it other aspects of your life?
Derek, that's a great question. And I think as I look back, it was a little bit of both. I was always somebody that loved to control, and I loved to know how things were going to play out. Even when I reflect back to my minor hockey days back in Forest, Ontario, I used to think, okay, am I going to make the A team? How am I going to play? Am I going to have a great season? Am I going to win an award at the end of the season? Are we going to win this tournament? And I wanted to know how it would all play out. And when I didn't have that understanding or that knowing of how it was going to play out, the anxiety, which I didn't know then, I thought it was just nerves, would start to rise up. But so I think it started probably in my personal life, but then it eventually found my way into my on ice life as well. And then better known as performance anxiety, because as we all know, you perform or you're out, one of the two. And if you don't perform, you're gone. And I think it got to the point that I wanted to play so badly, and I wanted to be there, and I wanted to continue to climb the ladder and fulfill my dream of being in the National Hockey League. And I put so much stock into that, it became who I was, as opposed to something that I just did really well.
Uh, well, I mean, just how open you are with that first little bit is incredibly refreshing. And I think a lot of people listening to this that are done playing, that are maybe just parents and have played, can relate to a lot of what you said. Just listening to your story, I can connect those dots in my life very, very easily. And I know probably Jamie can say the same thing. So I think just how you restarted this, I'm pretty excited to see where this conversation is going to go, because I think you're going to hit on a lot of aha moments for myself that I'm probably just going to be sitting here kind of listening and just taking it all in. So thank you for that opening. That was incredibly helpful.
You're welcome, Derek. And it took me a long time to get here, that just to open up and to understand that vulnerability is a superpower. Because I was locked up as tight as could be. I mean, if anybody asked me, Chuck, how you doing? Oh, I'm great. Life is good, man. I'm married. I got 2 kids. I got a great business. And this was after I retired. And then I would go home, lean against my door, and I'd sit there and cry. I'd just be tore up inside. And I think for a lot of us, Derek, and I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but I think there's a lot of us that struggle after we're done playing. We're trying to figure out who we are. Where do we fit in? What skill sets do we have? And I was so, on such a level that I really identified as a hockey player, because everybody tells us, oh, hey, Chuck, you're the hockey player. Yeah, okay. And so we start to buy into that, but we have to realize that we're so much more than that. It's just something that we've done really, really well for a long time.
So I'm gonna ask my question here. Two things before I ask it. Um, we probably should have I probably should have had a little better intro. So what would you what's your official title and like what do you call it? Are you a mental performance coach? What do you go for?
Well, I'm a certified professional coach, Jamie, and I don't really have a title, but yeah, you could call me a mental performance coach, and I really focus on the mental aspect, the mental health aspect, because I do believe that mental health is something that impacts all of us on some level, even though we don't always want to admit it. Um, if it's anxiety, if it's feeling depression, if it's feeling the pressure of making a team, or oh my gosh, now I've been drafted to the North American League, or I've been drafted to the USHL or the OHL. Now what? How am I going to keep this level of performance at this level for a sustained period of time? And so I think all of this plays into just our mental well-being. So, um, yeah, I like to call myself really a self-empowerment coach as well, because if you can self-empower yourself and maintain your power, don't give it to anybody else. It's yours. Don't give it to any coaches. Don't give it to any other players, which I did a really good job of for a long time of giving my power away. But I want to teach these young men and women to keep their power. It's yours, and it's yours to benefit from. And it's not being selfish. It's just they don't have any right to take it from you. So keep it. And when you maintain your power in any position, in any situation, you give yourself an opportunity to succeed and to live at a really high level at the rink and away from the rink. And to me, that's what it's all about, when you can do both.
Now you said earlier that you identified after your playing career that you struggled with anxiety or you thought it was just nerves. How, for when you're working with your athletes now, how do you help them differentiate between those two?
So a lot of it is futuristic. For me, it's futuristic and results driven. Okay, I'm going to this camp. I need to make this team. W- let's slow down, because you can't go from walking in the door at the tryout to making the team without going through and having 3 or 4 really good scrimmages, maybe a couple of really good practices, whatever they're going to do in the layout. And so nerves to me is something that, okay, I'm a little bit anxious. I'm a little nervous about this first ice session. I'm sitting here in the locker room. Okay. But when you're a week out and you're starting to run through, like, what if I don't make this team? What if? To me, that's anxiety driven, because now you're wanting to control how everything plays out. And to me, there's a big difference. If you're just a little nervous, which all of us are when as we're getting ready, and I think a little bit of butterflies in the tummy is always good, because it means, to me, it means you're ready, you're prepared, you're ready to go do this and excited. But when you're a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, and all of a sudden you're like, what if? And a lot of it is chasing and going down rabbit holes. What happens if I don't make this team? What happens if this guy doesn't like me? What happens if this happens? And we all know there's thousands of what ifs for every situation. Well, all of a sudden that turns into anxiety, because now you feel like you're out of control and you have no say in what happens. Does that make any sense how I say that?
It does. And I know that sometimes we've talked about it before where we say like nervousness has a sense of excitement to it, where anxiety is more of a sense of fear. And I
Yes.
think that that's a good differentiating factor. I really I have one more question before we dive into your playing career, because your journey to college and into pro is fantastic. I think it's one that everyone should hear. Um, with it's right it's June. It's Men's Health Month, Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I think it's really important for the parents to know, like, how are there usually telltale signs for you or for an athlete for when it's time to reach out, or and to make sure that it's not too late, I guess would be my question. Because I think about my own career and I reached out to have to get help way too late. And I never took those steps early on. Like, for if you're a parent listening or if you're a player listening, like, what are the internal signs for them that they're like that they should get some help?
I believe that it's as soon as you really recognize that this is something that you would like to pursue as something more than just, I love the game. Because and the reason that I say that, fellas, is because there's this stigma around needing help. Well, you don't need help. And a lot of times it comes from the parents. Well, my son's fine. He doesn't need any help. And yet the son is over there. When you talk to the son, how you doing? Chuck, this is a lot. Like, I need to make this team. I don't want to disappoint my mom and dad. They pay a lot of money for me to do this. And they've got all these reasons why they're doing it. And yet they have no outlet to express it. But there's this stigma around asking for help. And I'm a big believer that regardless of what you're doing, you need someone to talk to. And we all do it in our own different way, whether we have a good buddy, whether we have a significant other, we all have someone that we bounce things off of, that we talk to about, that we share and we open up. So why wouldn't your child have the same thing? And a lot of times parents want it to be them. And I was one of them. My daughters are still both pretty high level athletes. I wanted to be that person for them. And separately, they both looked at me and said, I just want you to be my dad. That's it. And so we actually hired someone for our daughters, even though this is what I do. We hired someone for them to talk to because they just wanted me to be their dad and cheer them on and tell them how much I love to watch them perform, because that's what I love to do. And that was hard for me at first. It was like, hey, maybe you can do this. And they just kind of look at me and I'm like, got it. I love to watch you perform. And I want to encourage parents everywhere to take that stance. Most children just want their parents to be their parents and to come and watch them, support them, good, bad, or indifferent of the performance, because we all have good days. We all have tough days. Just go and watch them and love them for how they're performing. And the opportunity to watch them is such a gift, because what is it? 1 or 2% get to make it to college or junior. 1 or 2% of that maybe make it to play pro. And 1 or 2% of that make it to the National Hockey League. And just because we're talking hockey, I mean, the numbers are so small. Enjoy watching them perform while you can, because it goes fast.
Okay, I have a question as a parent, and I don't know if you'll be able to help answer it. I think so. But so I've been coaching for 25 years, and me and Jamie have this conversation all the time, is today's athlete, lack of a better term, is soft. Like, they're softer than they were. And understanding what you're saying is, like, they're not softer. Just now there's more willingness to talk about things that are bothering them than in the past. As a father of a 9-year-old he's going to play U11 AAA hockey. And like, I'm hard on my kid, like, to the point where I try to find the line and I bring the line back. But how do we create tough athletes that can handle themselves away from us and build those skills without crossing the line and creating damage for them in the future? Like, I know this is probably a monster of a question, but this is like selfishly, like, I need these answers.
No, and I'm grateful that you asked that, Derek, because I think there's a couple of things that come to mind right away. And the first one is responsibility. I think one of the things that we've gotten away from our time, when I'm saying our time is the three of us, is we were responsible for our career, for lack of better terms. I say career, but the responsibility was on us to make sure that our gear was packed, to make sure that we knew what time practice was, to make sure that we knew what time we were going to be there, to understand that we had to own it. If we wanted it, we had to take responsibility. And I think now, just in general as a society, nobody takes responsibility for anything. And it's never anybody else's fault. Or it's never their fault. Sorry, it's everybody else's fault. So I think if we can teach them responsibility first and foremost, to own it, and then to make sure that if it's what they want, because a lot of parents push and have their children doing high level athletics because it's what the parent thinks the child wants. And one of the greatest gifts that my parents ever gave me, and they probably never even realized it, they knew how much I loved hockey, how much I wanted to play. Every season, they would ask me, do you want to play this year? Because if you do, we'll sign you up, but understand that if we sign you up, you're going to finish the year. And so that really had me own everything that I was doing. And I think we have to let these young men and women own it. It has to be their idea, because if it isn't, I believe that when the minute you turn your back, they're off doing something else. They're finding a way to get out of that pressure because it's not really what they want to do. But if it's theirs and they want to own it and take responsibility for it, it makes the parent's job way easier, because then you're not driving your kid and pushing and pushing and pushing. It's because they're pushing themselves. Does that sort of answer that for you, Derek?
Yeah, no, it's really good. And that's kind of like it's like a tier or two-tiered question I ask, because I'm asking that as a parent of a goalie, but also as a developer of a goalie. So when the kids get brought to me as a coach, I'm operating under the assumption that they're there because they want to get better. So I'll push them. But I'm also very fearful of not pushing my son too hard and trying to pull him back. And that's a balancing act that I think a lot of times, wearing both hats, I can definitely struggle with. So like you said before, is your daughters just wanted you to be dad. And I've had that conversation with my son, and my son wants me to be dad and wants me to be coach. And my life would be way easier if I could just drop him off at somebody else's goalie school. Like, drop off, leave. We tried that. He did not like that. So I'm kind of in the middle. And yeah, like a lot of times I feel like I need help navigating that path also.
And it could be as simple as when you have those conversations with your son, say, hey, for the next little bit here, I'm going to be the coach. I'm not going to be your dad. I'm going to be your coach, and almost set those guidelines of when you're coach and when you're dad. Because then he doesn't get the two mixed up either, because all of a sudden he may be like, well, why is dad yelling at me to do this, that, or the, no, that dad was in coach mode right there. Like that was, and if he can separate that, I think that might make it a little bit easier for him as well, and for you, because then, when you're sitting there watching whomever your favorite team is, the Leafs, the Panthers, whoever, the Blackhawks, doesn't matter who your favorite team is, but then it's just you and your son, and I'm dad. Hey, did you see that great save by Bob? Like, did you see how he did that? And then you can just have a father-son conversation. But then when you get to the rink, okay, it's coach, it's student. Hey, we talked about this yesterday. Let's try to work on this now. And all of a sudden there becomes that separation, so they don't bleed over and he doesn't misunderstand the love that you have for him as a dad and the love that you have and the care that you have as a coach. I think because a lot of times, and we've all heard the stories of some of the worst times for kids is the ride home. And because if they didn't play as well as dad thought they should have, they get blasted the whole way home. And all of a sudden that kid he's just disappointing his father nonstop. And no matter what he does, he can't ever reach that expectation that dad has. And so I think it's very, very important that we draw those lines as parents, that we don't over push these kids either, because at 8, 9, 10, 11, they're not going to the OHL, they're not going to college, they're not going to the National League next week. They have to enjoy the game, because if you're not enjoying it, it's even a harder road. It's hard enough. All three of us know it's hard enough, but if you're not enjoying and loving it, then it makes it miserable. And you see a lot of these guys are miserable because they're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it for somebody else.
Chuck, tell us a little bit more about your story. I mean, now you're down in Mobile, Alabama?
Yes.
Grew up in Ontario. Tell us a little bit of your journey getting to college. I know it's a long ask question, but I think it's one that the listeners and the viewers would definitely benefit from.
Well, thank you, Jamie. And before I do say it, I want to make sure that everybody understands. And I think I feel a little arrogant saying this or whatnot, but I think it's important to say that everybody's journey is different, right? Everybody's path is different. Just because somebody's getting drafted to the OHL or the USHL and you didn't, doesn't mean your career's over. It just maybe means that that's not the path you're going to take, or you're going to be a walk-on or whatnot. And And that was really my path. It was all over the place. I was drafted to the OHL, to the Ottawa 67s, did not make that team, and was sent home. And partway through the season, kind of a funny side story, they called and wanted to bring me back up. And my mother actually intercepted the call. I was not home, and she told them that there was no way that they were going to jerk my son around. And he is not coming to play for you ever. You didn't want him 3 months ago, so you can't have him now. And so after she told me that many years later, I just kind of looked at her with wide eyes. I was like, really? And she says, yeah. She says, I wasn't going to stand for that. They weren't going to treat you like that. And so the following year, I was picked up by the Detroit Ambassadors in the expansion draft, played a few months there with Detroit before Freddie Brathwaite was picked up. And Freddie had won the Memorial Cup the year before. So I guess this young rookie was out and Freddie Brathwaite was in. So I was sent back to Junior B. And really thinking that it was over. Like, there was, now what, right? I couldn't go to college because I had used up my eligibility playing major junior. But then Miami University came around and they said, hey, we can appeal your eligibility to the NCAA board if that's something you'd like to do. If you'd like to walk on, we would love to have you, and we will definitely, appeal your eligibility. So that's what I did. I headed to Oxford and to join Miami, but I was not able to be anything on the ice with the varsity team for the first year and a half while I was appealing my case, and then we won it. But then I had to, it was 9 games into my sophomore year before I was eligible to play varsity. And even when I was eligible to play, I was still playing junior varsity as well. And so I was practicing varsity, practicing JV, and also playing junior varsity games. I never did get into a game for varsity my sophomore year. And after the season, I sat down with Coach George Gwozdecki, and Coach Gwozdecki said to me, he says, what'd you think of your season? And I said, well, I think I'm getting there. I'm not where I want to be, but if I keep working hard, I'm going to get there and I'll be able to contribute to the program. And he looked at me in a very intimidating look, and he had his arms crossed, and I was scared of Coach Gwozdecki to start out with, and to have him stare at me like that didn't help the nerves or the anxiety. And he looked at me and he said, Charlie, let me be straight with you. You're never going to play here. And he says, as a matter of fact, he says, I'm going to call some Division III schools where you can transfer where you're going to play. And as he was reaching for his phone in his office, I stood up and I said, Coach, with all due respect, you're wrong and I will play here. I walked out and I slammed the door so hard I thought I broke the door in his office. And I actually had to turn back around to make sure I didn't shatter the glass. That's how hard I slammed the door. Went home to my apartment, cried for 2 days, thought it was over. Now what? And on the third day, I kind of thought to myself, I've got an option. I can either get back to work or I can feel sorry for myself. And so I opted to get back to work, and that's what I did. And I came back my junior year, and little did I know that in that meeting, Coach Gwozdecki actually cut me from our program at Miami. And when I came back my junior year, he kind of looked at me like, what are you doing here? And I did the dryland training before training camp, but when training camp opened my junior year, I wasn't even on the roster. I wasn't invited to varsity training camp. He said, you're going to go play club. And I said, okay. And that's what I did. I played JV the entire year again, practiced about 6 times with the varsity team my junior year, but just kept going. And I thought to myself, I just want to make sure that I leave it all on the table, that if I never play a game, I want to know that I gave it everything I had. And that's what I was doing. And there's some things that I was doing behind the scenes, as felt the way I was acting and the way I was doing and the operating. I like to think it was at a very high level, that it really contributed to what happened as I went into my senior season. And in between my junior and senior year, we had a coaching change. And at that time, Mitch Korn, who both of you guys probably know, Mitch has been in the NHL for many years now, and he was my goalie coach. And he came to me and he said, Chuck, he's like, if you'll work the Miami Hockey School this summer, I'll work with you over the summer to try to get you to a place that you can at least back up on the varsity team. And I was like, hey, here's maybe my chance. And I was like, I'm all in. So that's what I did. I would coach kids from 8 to 5 every day. And then usually about 9 o'clock at night on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Mitch and I would jump on the ice. And North American Hockey League Commissioner Mark Frankenfeld would be my shooter. And we would be out on the ice for about 30 to 45 minutes. And I would see anywhere from maybe 500 to 1,000 pucks in that time. Or sometimes we would work on nothing but form and positioning. But I was exhausted at the end of it. And at the end of the summer, I was invited to training camp with our new staff. And I came out of training camp and I had made the varsity team. I was the backup goalie. And I can tell you, as sure as I'm sitting here many years later, I had no thoughts that I would ever play a game. It was just, I wasn't going to play junior varsity anymore. I was a full-time varsity player, and life was pretty good. 6 games in, we were in the third period of our 6th game of the season. We were playing at Bowling Green, getting beat 6-2, and our season was not off to a very good start, I can promise you. I think we were probably 1-5 or 1-4 at that point. I mean, we were not doing very well. With about 10 minutes left in the third, and our new coach, Mark Mazzolini, looked at me. He says, "Hey, Chuck, let's go. You're in." I looked at him. He's like, "Yeah, I'm talking to you. Let's go. You're in." So I jumped over the boards there at Bowling Green, and one of our players was hurt in the corner. And fellas, I just stood there. I looked around and I started crying. I had realized my dream that I was playing in a varsity Division I varsity hockey game. And my buddy come back to me at the time, Andrew Miller, and he put his arm around me and he's like, I looked at him and said, "Millsy, I did it. Like, I'm playing in a game." I still get emotional thinking about standing there. And I said, "I did it." And he's like, "This is just the beginning. Let's go." Taps me on the pads and he skates away. And I'm like, "Are you nuts? Like, it's taken me over 3 years to play 10 minutes and you're telling me this is just the beginning?" I'm like, whatever. So I played those 10 minutes, made a bunch of saves, didn't give up any goals, was in the locker room, probably the happiest guy in any locker room in the country that night. And I just, man, I did it. Like, I played. Never thought that I would play anymore. And the following weekend, we played Ohio State home and home. Friday night, we got beat at Ohio State, and I was not playing. But Saturday morning, Coach Maz came to me. He says, "Hey, Chuck, you're going to go tonight." It's like, all right, well, that's pretty cool. I get a game tonight, and I got 10 minutes last weekend. Heck, this is all right. Well, I went out and beat him 4-2. And he came up to me after. He says, "If you play like that, you're going to play a lot this year." I said, "Well, thank you, Coach." Again, no idea what that meant. But what it ended up meaning as the season went along is that I'd play every game but one the rest of the way. And went on to accomplish a lot of really good things. Was given a lot of different awards in the old CCHA when Michigan State, Lake State, Ohio State, Bowling Green, we were all in the old CCHA. But I was goalie of the year. I was first team All-Star. I was our team MVP. Miami's athlete of the year. I mean, it just kept going. Every time I turned around, it seemed like I was getting another award, and I feel very arrogant saying that. But it was true. I really was really awarded a lot of different things. The Terry Flanagan Award for overcoming great adversity in a career. And then it was all capped off by being Miami hockey's first ever first team All-American. And fellas, I'm not sure I know what that means still as I sit here at, many, many years later. But it really launched me into being able to play 8 years professional and getting a crack to hopefully fulfill my dream of playing in the National Hockey League, which didn't happen. But I came very close, played in the old International League and was called up to the American League many times. But it was such an amazing ride, and I would do it all again if somebody told me that it would not be easy. But what I've done is I've really taken my journey and all the things that I went through on and off the ice and really created a program now that I turn around and help equip these young men and women with all the tools that I had that I didn't know that I was doing at the time, because I'd been asked many times, "Chuck, how did you go from being a walk-on to being an All-American?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just did it." Like I had no clue. But it took me many years, and I sat back and really analyzed it, and I realized what I did and really put it now into a program. And I give those tools to these young men and women now so that, and listen, it's not about making the NHL. I don't believe that's what it's all about. It's about who you become in that process. And making the National Hockey League is obviously a goal, and I want that to be the goal. Playing Division I, playing in the OHL, I want that to be the goal. Because if you have that high-level goal, it's who you become in the process of chasing that dream. And because we have a lot of years that we don't strap the pads on, or we don't grab a stick and play, or we play for fun. We're not playing for high-level stakes or a career or the multi-million-dollar contracts or anything else. So for me, it's about who we become in the process. But if you become a high-level person on and off the ice, and everything you do is high level, and you know what, you're going to give yourself an opportunity to play at the highest level possible. And I'm a firm believer too, fellas, and I would love for your thoughts on this, but I'm always a believer that it's not always the best players that make it. It's the players that just continue to persevere, continue to grind, continue to work. Because I was never the best goalie, I promise you. But I just was never going to be outworked. And I learned how to use my mind as an asset, because so many people think it's all physical. But as you continue to climb the ladder, as both of you know, it becomes 80-90% mental and 10 to 15% physical. And yet everybody puts hours and hours and hours and hours into the physical, which is okay. But don't forget about the mental side, because the mental side is what is going to get you over the top. And that's really what helped me do that at Miami, was just the mental side of things that my mom and dad had taught me many years earlier, and again, that I didn't realize that I really put into place and allowed me to do all those great things.
A lot of great things there, and I want to keep building off that. But when you said that you don't believe that everyone that makes it is always the most talented, I think I would definitely throw myself under that umbrella. I was not the most talented, but I just worked and worked and worked. And the saying that I usually tell my athletes is that beyond mountains, there are mountains. So you're going to climb one mountain, and there's going to be another one, and then another one, and there's always going to be a mountain. But my journey is similar to yours in a sense, in terms of kind of like, I would say, fighting against the odds and making it to professional hockey. And, to go through what you went through from JV to cut and all these things takes incredible mental resilience. And I do think that the ability to kind of think the game and process and push through the mental side of it is the asset that a lot of the people that aren't the Connor McDavids of the world have in order to get through that level. However, both you and I hit a roadblock where what we thought was our mental strength, that our biggest strength would be the mental toughness, our brain became, and our mindset became probably our biggest enemy. So I guess I try not to give two-part questions, but the first would be, can you dive into that part for you? And the second would be, do you ever find that there's a pattern, or there's any sort of like event for a lot of athletes, myself, you, others that you face, where there is that turning point where all of a sudden this player that you would classify them as so mentally tough, all of a sudden they start working against themselves?
Yes, and that's a fantastic question, and I often look back at my career, Jamie, and I think I shared this with you, and have started to get a little bit more open with this part of my career. When I made it to professional hockey, like through Miami, I really had this I can do this mentality, and then I got to professional hockey in the old IHL, and I remember so vividly, and this was the point in my career that things started to change for me. I remember looking down. I was playing against guys like Curtis Joseph, Pokey Reddick, Clint Malarchuk was on the other bench in Vegas, Stefan Beauregard, Tommy Sallow was part of the Islanders organization. And I remember, but it was so vivid when I saw Curtis Joseph in the other net. And I thought to myself, what in the heck am I doing on the ice with Curtis Joseph? Like, I watch him on Hockey Night in Canada. What am I doing here? And what had risen for me at that point was my lack of self-worth. And that was something I didn't really know was in my DNA until that point. And that was something that kept showing up for me and kept showing up for me, to the point that I manifested a knee injury. And I tore the meniscus in my knee because I didn't feel like I belonged on the ice with guys like Pokey Reddick and Clint Malarchuk and Curtis Joseph and all of these other players. And because when I was playing at the beginning of the year, I was having a really good season, but I still deep down didn't believe that I belonged there. I wasn't worthy of being at that level. And so I'm a big believer that your thoughts will manifest into things. And I manifested a knee injury that put me out of playing in the International Hockey League the rest of that season. But I think that, to answer that part of the question, but I also think that once that belief system changes a little bit, and you can see it because guys start to, I say, act a little bit abnormally, maybe out of character a little bit. Maybe there's going to be some substance use. They're going to start to do things out of character. And I look back now, and I was definitely doing things out of character because I didn't think I belonged. But once you start to see that, I think that's when that moment happens, Jamie. And if people are aware enough to see it, which because I lived it, I can now pick it up on it with different people, and I can be like, okay, something's going on. He's starting to act out of character and do things a little differently, or they become fearful of success, like because it's what happened. And so what they do is they hold back. But again, it's a character trait, right? And a lot of it stems down to self-worth. And what a lot of people don't understand, and I know where my roots are, and we won't necessarily get into that, where my self-worth or lack of self-worth came from. But a lot of the lack of self-worth comes from coaches, comes from parents. Those are the two big sources, and it's in words. It's what are you saying to these young men and women more than once, and they're believing it. Because at 8, 9, 10, 11, we believe our coaches, we believe our parents. And it can be as simple as, if you keep playing like that, you're not going anywhere. Nobody's going to want you if you keep doing this. And all of a sudden, they get this belief that if I don't play at a certain level, there's no way I'm going to make it. Well, all of a sudden, if they don't even know what that level is, but it's never good enough. And so if I'm not getting shutouts or I'm not getting wins, then I'm not good enough. And even though they may progress to that, it's still in the back of their mind that if I don't play well enough, I'm never going to make it. And they play that over and over and over. And all of a sudden it becomes their belief system. And it was just a simple statement that somebody made after a game that they lost 4-3 in the finals of the championship game of the tournament in Kincardine or wherever in Ontario, or wherever you are. But they buy it, and all of a sudden it becomes their belief system. So I encourage parents all the time. I talk to coaches all the time. Be careful what you say. Your words have power. Your words, and for these young 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, they can't determine because they're not cognitively aware enough of what you're really trying to say. And they internalize it. And that was part of what happened with me, is I believed one of my coaches at one point, I'm sure, because I look back and I've done a lot of work around this, and this is one instance, continues to come up for me, continues to come up. So I know that that's one of the sources of that belief that I wasn't worthy to make it, that I wasn't worthy to do it. But yet I look back at it, fellas, in a really maybe strange kind of way. People would look at me and be like, how can you say that? It's a blessing. Everything that's happened is a blessing. And because I don't know that I'd be doing the work I'm doing now had I made it to the National League. Would I have loved a game? You betcha. I would have loved to have at least had one game. But I also looked at that this is all bigger than me, and that I believe that that the path that I took was for a reason. The things that I've been through were for a reason. And I think that I'm right on purpose now with being able to turn around and help these young men and women work through the things they're working through.
What part of your career, in your pro career, did the issues start to arise for you? Early, towards the end, the middle of it?
No, it was pretty much right away, Jamie. And I'll never forget my first pro game. I played with the LA Ice Dogs in the International League, and we were playing the Utah Grizzlies. And I was getting my first start against Tommy Salo. And I remember I still see myself standing at my locker. I had my suit on, and I had just changed. I got my underwear on and my underclothes. And my coach came up to me and he looked at me and he's like, how'd you sleep this afternoon, kid? He's like, good luck tonight. And he started laughing at me. And it was at that point that then it started to, I think the anxiety, the nerves really started to take hold. But they really started to manifest from that point on. And really for 8 years, I would get sick before every game I played. And what it meant if I was getting sick was that Chuck was ready to play, because that was at a time that you didn't really ask questions, right? Like, hey, what's wrong? Are you okay? And I don't look back to any of my trainers and think negatively, or the doctors or anything. But it lasted for a solid 8 years that I would get sick before games. And to be honest with you, and when I retired, that was one of the reasons that I retired, was I was done. I was exhausted from getting sick before games. Like, it was to the point that some nights I didn't enjoy playing as much as I wanted to because of it. Like, I knew what was coming. And some nights I would stand in my crease and we'd be in the ready to drop the puck in the first period, and I would be absolutely exhausted on every level because of the anxiety leading up to the game, the getting sick. That it just drained me. And some nights you had to battle for everything you were worth. At the end of the game, you'd sit in your locker, just sit back and be like, I don't know how I got through that, but I did. Um, and that part of it just became just more than I wanted to continue to deal with. I say that. And I just knew that it was time to retire. And I thought that I was going to leave it behind me. That was the fascinating part of it. I thought it was all hockey related, but it was just playing out in hockey. And that's the other thing I often share with parents is some of these things are playing out in hockey, but it's far deeper. This is life stuff that's going on. What's going on in life? What's the thought process? What have you experienced that this is playing out to bring it to your attention in hockey, that you will actually work through it and talk through it and deal with it? And everybody has an option. You're either going to deal with it or you're not going to. I didn't, because we just didn't know that was something you did until after I retired. But I often think back, had I had someone to talk to and express what was going on, and even though I didn't know how to verbalize it, I think it could have been beneficial. And Jamie, I think you and I have had that conversation too, just the ability to verbalize how we were feeling. But if we had, we probably should have just packed our bag at the same time, because we would have been traded, released, cut, whatever. It just wasn't something that you dared to do. And even now, players are still very, very hesitant to open up and to share. But I find that very much like today, when I'm vulnerable, it opens that door for them to feel safe and to talk. Even if we're in the corner of the rink where nobody can see us behind the Zamboni, and, we're tucked in somewhere in the Zamboni room, I don't care where we go. Let's just talk. Because the more you can talk and get it off your chest, the better off you're going to be, because that weight doesn't go away. I promise you, until you start to talk through it. And that's really what I love to do, is just be that resource, and then give these tools for the on ice performance, but also the off ice, because it's how you operate as a person every single day is how you're going to operate on the ice. And so I like to empower them as young men and women, so that they live at a high level here, so that when they step on the ice, it transitions immediately. But it doesn't work the other way. I learned that in a hurry too.
Yeah, I mean, like we have talked obviously prior, and a lot of the things are the same, where my warm up was so long, and I look at it now, and it wasn't really to get my body warm. It was to exhaust myself, so that I wouldn't have the energy to think about how much I was fearful of playing. Same thing where, like, I would usually, like, my pregame naps, I would try to sleep for like 4 hours, because I wanted to wake up groggy and tired, because I couldn't think about it, because I spent all the last 24 hours thinking about losing. Or, like, for me, like, towards when I started after my first year pro, when things started to go poorly mentally for me, it was more I was just couldn't wait for the game to be over. Like, I didn't want to lose, obviously, but when the game was over, and we won, it was instead of a great game, it was, oh, thank God that's done. I get to breathe a little bit until the next start, and then the next start, and the next start. And I know a lot of these things, like, my worst periods were when I was playing, but I know that these things definitely do manifest into life outside of hockey. And I'm just would like for you, if you're comfortable, to talk a little bit about how your post-playing career, and how your mental health and the things that developed throughout life and hockey built up and continued, even though you officially retired from playing.
Absolutely. And thank you for that opportunity, because and as I shared, when I was a young boy, I was always wanting to know how things would play out, and that went into my junior career, and then to Miami, it wasn't so much, but it was showing up in the classroom. I was experiencing test anxiety, and never really thought anything of it. Didn't know what it was. I just had a real inability to take things from my brain and put it on the paper for the test, and that, as I shared, then morphed into being on the ice. But that was, again, it was at a time that we didn't really talk about it, right? Like, what was going on. And I remember so vividly, I came out of our bedroom, I was heading into our living room, and I was crying. And my wife just looked at me and she says, "What's wrong?" I said, "I don't know." She says, "Well, you can't tell me." And I said, "I don't know how to verbalize what I'm feeling." And she says, "Well, can you try?" And I said, "I want to jump out of my skin." I said, "I want to just," and she's like, "Well, what does that mean?" And I'm like, "My whole body is vibrating." And I said, "It's just vibrating at a level that if I could just jump out of my skin, I would feel more comfortable." And she says, "Well, I don't really know how to help you." And I said, "Well, I don't know how to help myself either because I have no idea what I'm experiencing." And so what I did, and I went to many doctor's appointments because I had panic attacks at my desk afterwards. I would be sitting at my desk at the company I was running and sweating profusely. My heart rate would just go through the roof, and I had no idea what was happening. And so after about the third or fourth one, my wife's like, "You probably need to go to the doctor, don't you?" And I'm like, I'll figure it out. I'm a hockey guy. I can do this. Like I've figured everything else out. Why wouldn't I figure this out?" And she's like, "No, I think you need to go to the doctor." And I was like, "Okay, I'll go to the doctor for you then." And so that's what I did. But when I went, did all these tests and stress tests, and Mr. Thuss, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm like, "Okay." Told my wife, "There's nothing wrong with me." And I knew internally that it wasn't that something was wrong. It was just something was off. Something wasn't quite right. But I couldn't verbalize it. The doctors told me that there was nothing wrong. And so I just kept going, putting my head down, but the anxiety would just continue to get more intense, more intense, more intense. And if for anybody that's had that level of anxiety, you will know that depression comes to the party as well. They don't want to be left out. So while I was fully anxious 24/7, I would wake up anxious to the point that I would want to throw up in the morning. I would go to bed anxious to the point that my stomach was turning when I went to bed, but I was also fully depressed. And I mean, when it was just, the world was a dark place for me. It was very lonely. Just to do anything took every ounce of energy that I had. Some days I could get out of bed, some days I couldn't. I was trying to be a husband, a father to two beautiful young girls, run my business, and I wasn't doing any of them very well. I look back now and I think to myself, I don't know how I even functioned certain times. And I remember one Saturday afternoon or one Saturday morning, my wife and I went to my place of business and we were going to catch up on some paperwork and whatnot. And we were looking through the bill folder and she's like, "Okay, we need to pay some bills." I'm like, "Okay." And she says, "So here's the power bill. Do we need to pay this?" I looked at her. I'm like, "I don't know." She says, "What do you mean you don't know?" I said, "I have no idea if I need to pay that." I couldn't even cognitively add up one and one to get two to understand that I needed to pay the power bill to keep the lights on at my office so I could continue to do business. It didn't even register. Like my mind wouldn't even go there. And that just continued to manifest like that for 7, 8, 9 months until it was in the fall of 2008. I was driving home from one business location to another in the late afternoon, early evening, and fully anxious, fully depressed. And I thought to myself, if this is how life is, and I think I was in my 30s at that point, kind of mid to late 30s. And I thought to myself, if this is what life is about and I need to live like this for the next 50 or 60 years, I'm not doing it. I'm out. Like this is not worth doing. And at that point, I had no recollection of my wife, my two daughters living without me. I was in so much pain and in such a dark place that I don't think I wanted to die. I just wanted the pain to end. The pain had to stop. And the only way that I knew for it to stop was to take my life. That was it. There was no other, I had no other thought process that somebody could help me, nothing. And so as I'm driving down the interstate, I looked at a guardrail and I thought, if I can drive my Yukon into that guardrail at 85 miles an hour head on, that should do it. And hopefully I won't be here to answer any questions, but it'll just look like maybe I lost control of my truck and, oh boy, that's sad. Chuck's not here. Got in a car wreck, single car wreck. And my foot went down and away I went. And I was like, wow, this is how it all ends. And this is it. And gentlemen, I I'm a firm believer that there's a power way bigger than us, and I call it God. But I believe that power came over me that day and had me pull over because I had zero reason to pull over. And I reached in my pocket and grabbed a business card that my mom had given me 4 or 5 years earlier and said, if you need anything, you call this lady. So I pulled, not without even thinking, I pulled her card out and dialed her number. And when she answered, I said, my name is Charles Thuss. I said, you don't know me, but you know my mom. And I said, I don't want to live anymore. And the phone went silent. And I thought to myself, I just had the courage to make a call for help. And the phone went silent. What the hell have I done? And this angel voice came back and she says, you're going to be okay. I remember saying, the hell I am. I said, I'm looking at a guardrail that I was going to drive my truck into, and you're telling me I'm going to be okay? She says, you are going to be okay. I said, I don't believe you. I said, but I have no other choice. I said, she says, well, if you'll walk with me and talk with me and I'll work with you. I said, we'll get through this together. I'm like, I don't have any other choice unless I get back in my truck and start driving 85 miles an hour again. And so, but that's what I did, just blindly. I followed this lady's lead, and she would take me through some times that I was literally living hour to hour again because the anxiety and depression were so intense. And I was home from work and I'd just cry all day. And she would walk me through it. And she started to empower me with some tools. I started to implement those tools into my life. And 8 years later, I was able to find my way to start interacting back into society, what I say, because I kind of lived under a rock for 8 years. And as I came through that, I started to realize, and I remember having a conversation with the assistant athletic director at Miami when he called me. And for the first time I shared my story, my mom and dad had no idea what I had been through. My brother and sister didn't know. The only two people that knew were my wife and Sheila, the lady that saved my life. And when I shared it with him, I said, are there other people going through this kind of thing, do you think? Like, is there anything going on like this in college and these college athletes, are they experiencing anything like I'm going through? And he then informed me that, anxiety and depression was the number one issue at college athletics. And if I could find a way to be able to talk to these young men and women, that I could probably really help a lot of them. And so that started the ball rolling. And here we are a number of years later, still doing this work and love every minute of what I do. And just to be able to be a support system for people to talk and then empower them and give them the tools to help them work through it. But because I'm a believer, gentlemen, that place of dark and lonely at that cross section, there's been a lot of former teammates that I've had, former coaches that have been at that cross section of life as well, and made a permanent decision to a temporary situation. And unfortunately, they're not here anymore. But we lose a lot of former hockey players every year. I mean, anywhere between typical 6 to 10, it seems like every year that we lose to death by suicide. They can't do it anymore, and they feel alone. And I'm here to hopefully have those conversations, whether you're retired or current, because there's a lot of current players as well that have some thoughts that aren't healthy, that are in those dark places. But I know what they're feeling. I know what they're going through. I kind of know where they are. And so we have those conversations to let them know that it's going to be okay. Just like Sheila did with me, it's going to be okay. Just keep walking and we'll walk this journey together. But I look back and I often think, I don't know how I got there, but I'm very, very grateful that I went through all of that, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to do the work that I'm doing today. And a lot of people might think that's a little strange to hear that. But it really is. It's a great gift. And just, I'm grateful that I'm here to share it and to shine some light on and be a support system and a safe place for people to talk.
I really appreciate you sharing your story. I mean, I think there's probably more people that we think that go through situations like these and have experiences like these. And one of the things that you mentioned that you say it a couple times, where when you look at anxiety or you look at the way that you and like myself similar are wired, where we're always looking at every single possible outcome. Now, some of the things that I kind of I don't say balance, but balance, but I see pop up is like you hear the saying like failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And so sometimes if you some performance people and like you read a lot of books, they say like you need to prepare for every possible outcome so that when one of them approaches, you know how to deal with it. How obviously that's detrimental because you're always thinking about the negative things. You never ever think about the positive scenarios of it. It's always the negative. How can athletes work through that sense of wanting because we're always so analytical. How can we find ways to always try to see things glass half full versus glass half empty and not always default to all the things that can go wrong in any scenario in our lives?
That's a fantastic question, Jamie. And I think because our society is so results driven, that it's all about the result. And I often share with my clients and the people that I work with that for me, it's not always, if you don't focus on the result, but you focus on the path to get there. And I'm going to take goaltending, for instance. Like, okay, we need to win this game. We're in game 7, big game. I got to show up. We need to win. That's a pretty big elephant to try to take and eat in one bite. Like, you're looking at a pretty big range of things that could happen and things that are out of your control. You have no control of the ref. You have no control how the other team plays. You don't know how your forwards and D are going to play. So a lot of these things are out of your control. And so what I like to do is let's make it simpler. Let's bring it back into controlling the controllable. What can we control in this instance, in this journey? And let's focus on those things. Let's make sure we're prepared. Have we gotten, are we eating well? Are we sleeping well? Have we put the work in? Okay, it's game time. Now, what are we going to focus on? What is the one thing that we do every day, game in and game out, regardless of who we're playing, regardless of what game it is? We just stop the puck. So let's focus on making one save at a time. Because if we make one save at a time and focus on just play by play, save by save, we're going to work ourselves and put ourselves hopefully in a position that at the end of it, we're going to get the result we want. But if we're so focused on the result, we never really know how to get there. And we're all over the map and we're not focused on anything. And we've all heard the analogy of, if you put a boat without a GPS and you send it out in the ocean, where does it end up? Who knows? It just goes all haywire. But if you take that same boat and you have a GPS and you put the GPS coordinates in there, it'll take you right there. And so that's what I like to do is just let's dial in on the coordinates. How are we going to get there? Well, we're going to take it moment by moment, save by save, frame by frame of this game. And if we will continue to put save after save after save together, we're going to put a good period together. We're going to go in, we're going to reset, we're going to come out and do the same, make one save at a time. And if we get scored on, just reset. Start like you would just a normal period, but break it down into more bite-sized pieces. And how are we going to eat that elephant? We're going to do it one bite at a time. And meaning we're going to do it one save at a time, because oftentimes I think that the scope is just far too large, that we're trying to digest or take in or process how we're going to get there. So I like to just break it down into the small components that we can digest and do and work through. And when you do that, a lot of times you're going to put yourself in a position. I'm not going to say you're going to win every game because there's so many different factors, but you're going to put yourself in a position to hopefully have the outcome that you desire.
No, that's fantastic. It's a good way to look at it. I know, like, I'm trying to think, years ago, I read a book, a Navy SEAL book, and that was their kind of philosophy where it's like you're going into things and training is life or death. You have to look at every possible outcome. But the looking at the negative all the time, it's hard to see the positive things. When it comes to the athletes that you work with, typically young men and young women, since you started this, your practice, has there been any changes or like common themes in terms of what you see typically come across your desk in terms of the athlete and what they're dealing with and their struggles?
There is. And and probably the biggest thing is outside pressure. And the appearance of wanting to fit in, to be elite, because if I get drafted, it looks good. If I make this team, it looks good. And everything is, I call it social media driven, because then I can post that I now have been drafted to the North American League, the Ontario League, the USHL, the NHL. I can put it on my X profile. And a lot of it is so superficial is the word that I'm going to use, because it's all the window dressing, which to me, I think if you're doing it for those reasons, you're going to burn yourself out before you even really get started, because you're not doing it for the right reason. And I think back to when we played, we didn't have X, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have all these different, we just worked. And the other in kind of conjunction with that work is we now live in an instant society. If you want something, you order it on Amazon and you have it either this afternoon or you have it first thing in the morning. And a lot of the mentality is, if I work hard today, something great is going to happen tomorrow. And if I work hard today, the North American League draft is next week, I'm going to get drafted because I've put the work in. But I heard it said to me probably a couple of weeks ago, and this is really good. And Jamie, you referred to it earlier, that it was mountain after mountain after mountain, that even though you climb one, you're going to come down the other side and there's going to be another one. And I often think, and I heard it also said, that you have to have that mentality that you go to a lake with a ladle and you take a scoop of water every day and you walk it and you put it in another bucket or another pond. And when will that lake empty is kind of like, when am I going to make it? You never know. You just have to keep going. You have to keep taking ladles. You have to keep working with no expectation of when you're going to get there, if you're going to get there. But everybody wants that guaranteed result, that if I do this, I'm going to get this. But it just doesn't work that way. You have to do it with zero expectation. And I often say, expect everything with zero expectations. That you know that the world is your oyster, but you have zero expectation if you're actually going to achieve any of it. And to me, it's that internal drive then that has to take over, because you don't know if you're going to make it. And I hear oftentimes, well, what if I do all this work and I don't make it? Well, if you don't put the work in, you know you're not going to make it. So wouldn't you rather at least put yourself and have a chance at fulfilling your dream? And again, then it comes back to the full circle of, it's who you become in the pursuit of this dream, in the pursuit of what you're doing. Jamie, you're a perfect example. You're a doctor, right? And what the skills that you needed to become a doctor, I would dare say, were skills that you picked up along the way of your hockey journey. The courage, the resilience, the persistence, the endless pursuit of hours put in, of not knowing, oh, if I put in 3 hours today, well, maybe it's going to be 5. I don't know. I have to study until I know the material. And so what you did is you took a lot of the same skills that you had in hockey, and now you've taken them into the business world to become a doctor, to do a lot of great work with these athletes on the ice, off the ice. But it was all really because of, in a lot of ways, who you became in your journey. And the same thing for me. People would say, but Chuck, you never made it. I didn't make it to the National League. But it was who I became in the journey that allows me to now turn back and help others. And I think that's the piece that often gets missed, because so few guys make it. And when I say make it, it's to the National Hockey League. But I think it's about who you become in the process, and that you put yourself in a position to fulfill your dream. And even if you fall short of it, look at the person you became in that process. It's amazing. And so many of us, you look at a lot of hockey guys, how successful they are. It's pretty amazing. And I only say hockey because that's our sport, but it's very, very admirable about the people that we become along this process. And I think it's not all or nothing. It's not, if I make it to the NHL, I was successful, and if I didn't, I'm not. Because regardless of how far you make it, you're a tremendous success with the person that you've become. And I think that's there needs to be a little bit more focus on that, as opposed to a lot of times what I do here is my mom and dad pay a lot of money for me to play hockey. I need to make it so I can pay them back. And that's just, to me, that's a hard road to walk, because if you don't make it and sign that multi-million-dollar contract, then what? Your self-worth it's in the tank. And how do you recover from that? Because you internalize that to be the belief system that if I make it, I'm great. If I don't, I'm not. And to me, that's a tough way to live.
I have one last question here, Chuck. Hopefully, Booge, if you have any questions, you can chime in. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but going back to what you said, this I like you mentioned right about the social media, the instant kind of, whether it's gratification or expected results. Now, it's a lot easier said than done to explain these to young athletes. How do you go about breaking down those walls and those expectations when you first meet an athlete? I think that's the biggest one, because that will give our listeners some, like, an actionable step. But how do you there's so many metaphors you can use, but you can see the forest from the trees, or scoop the water and all these things. Like, what when you first get someone and you see, like, okay, they expect all these things, what's step one for you in terms of saying, like, hey, we need to take a step back, look at the big picture, and then you start to begin to get them to buy in and trust and enjoy the process and the journey?
For me, Jamie, and I love that question, but it's all, and I tell all of my athletes this is about you. This isn't about the guy on Instagram. This is not about the guy on Elite Prospects. It's not about the guy that just got drafted first overall in the USHL draft. This is about you. What do you want from this game? Who do you want to become in this journey? What is your goal? Let's not anybody else's. Because the minute that you start to compare yourself to somebody else, you're going backwards, not only because that person has his own journey, but everybody, as I shared earlier, we all have a different path. And just because you didn't get drafted to the USHL, the OHL, whatever, doesn't mean that you can't make it. But your path is just going to be different. So I really start to turn the view inside. Let's make this about you. It's about the man in the mirror. And that's the person we're focused on. We're not focused on anybody else. What do you want from this? What are your goals and dreams on and off the ice? Who do you want to become in this process on and off the ice? And then that's our starting point, so that we're always focused on us, because we are the only one that we can control. But a lot of times I hear this every day. Well, Chuck, I'm playing against these guys that are, 09s, and I'm a 2012. Like, they're so much bigger, so much better. Well, how do you know he's an 09 when he's got his mask and his jersey and his skates and stick and he's coming down the wing? How do you know he's are you seriously looking at him and thinking, this guy's an 09, he's going to rip it over my glove because he's older than me? No, this is about you. It's not about him. But a lot of times we and this goes back to giving our power away, is we make it about everybody else and we forget about the guy that we actually have control over. And even us, we have so little control. We only can control our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. But if we're not even controlling that, we're going backwards. And so to kind of come full circle, Jamie, I take the focus and I put it on the athlete. This is about you. It's not about anybody else. And what do we need to do? What do you need to do to get you from point A to point B, where you want to go, how you want to get there, who you're going to become in the process? Because if you want to be more, you have to be more. So who do we have to become to be that person? Just no different than you. When you look back, when you were a freshman in college, did you ever think that you would be a doctor? Probably not, I'm guessing. And maybe you did, maybe you had that dream, but I'm guessing probably not. But you didn't have the ability or the skills, or you weren't the level of person as a freshman in college to be a doctor at that point. So to be more, you had to become more. You had to grow as a human, and you had to be more so that you could actually be the person that you are today doing the work that you're doing. But we can't do that unless we focus on ourselves. And that's not, I don't want that to sound selfish or arrogant, but you're the only one that you have control over, and the work that you're going to put in the process and becoming more. So it's really about that starting point, is turning the mirror around and looking at the man in the mirror.
Chuck, I appreciate your time so much and your story and your openness. Hopefully that I know that our listeners and viewers are going to get a ton of value of this. Before we wrap it up, Derek, do you have any final questions?
No, I have millions and millions of questions, but that's what here in silence is. I was trying to process all this, and like to me, this is such an important conversation that I didn't want to get the train off the tracks. And it is, like I said, like this is something as a, if I'm listening to this as a parent of a hockey player, I'll be enthralled. Like it is unbelievably important that we get your message out there, and you hit on so many points that I can relate to as through my journey, and also coaching hundreds of elite goalies and their journeys and being in some of those conversations. And same thing. I have an upstairs office at my place, and I say to every new young kid coming through that there hasn't been a guy ahead of you that you see come in this door that's trained that has not been in that office crying. And it is, you're right. Like it is getting easier for these conversations to start and happen. But that has to continue getting easier and easier and easier. And this is something that shouldn't be hard to talk about anymore. And like I said at the very beginning, like a lot of this that I took out as a parent is how not to damage my athlete. And I think a lot of parents are gonna get a lot out of this. So thank you very much for coming on. And this is going to be one that I listened to back a few times.
And I appreciate that. And I want to leave the parents that are listening today just with one final thing. And we talked about it earlier, if I may. I want to encourage you that whether your son or daughter plays well, they win, they lose, they score 4, they get a shutout, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just look at them at the end of the game, at the end of the practice, and let them know that you just love to watch them play. You just love to watch them perform, and watch the difference in your athlete. Don't critique them. The coach has already done that. Don't tell them they need to do this, that, or the other thing. The coach has probably already done that, or they're smart enough to know, hey, I should have had that one. It went 5-hole. I should have had it. They already know. They're smart enough. You don't have to tell them. But just look at them and tell them that you absolutely love to watch them perform, and you watch them to play, and you love watching them play the game they love. And watch the difference in their stature, in the way they react, in their way they carry themselves, in the way they perform. It's going to be like you've just taken the shackles off, because as kids, we don't ever want to disappoint our parents. That is for many of us, that is like the worst thing that we could ever do, is disappoint our parents. But when you look at them and you say, I just love watching you play, and they may have just had the worst game ever. Doesn't matter. They know that they're not being judged on their performance, that you just love them for being who they are and their skill level and what they did today. And that is a complete, not just a game changer, but a life changer for them. So I want to encourage all the parents just to try that a few times and see the difference in their athletes.
Chuck, where can people find you if they have questions, they want to work with you, all those things? Where's the best way to get a hold of you?
My website is thecompassionateconnection.com. I'm also willing to give my cell phone number out. You can call, you can text, you can whatever, but that number is 251-680-5731. And all the different, Instagrams and Facebooks and all that kind of stuff. It's either thecompassionateconnection.com. But yeah, just look me up and hit me up, and I'd love to have a conversation with anybody that wants to reach out. And gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for this. So thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.